Peace. Welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraj Muhammad. Today, folks, let's talk about the fact that President Trump is back in the news where the National Archives had to retrieve presidential documents that were at his Mar-a-Lago residence, take them back to D.C. We're going to talk about the implication of the former president taking these records with him when he left the White House. Also, we'll talk about Twitter and how they have a new downvote feature. Are we going to start downvoting people who don't think the same way about the world? We'll have that conversation. Plus, let's talk about community colleges and how Joe Biden has officially said that community colleges will not be free, and that's not a part of the big Build Back Better social plan. What impact will this make? And then, of course, later, cultural appropriation or not. We'll talk about how Asian actress Awkwafina had to defend herself on social media because many people have said that she has been culturally appropriating Black culture. Well, who determines that, and where's the line between loving a culture and appropriating? We got a whole lot to get to, plus we check in with our culture crew members and a whole lot more. So stay riding with us. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. All right, folks, welcome to the show. We got a lot to talk about as we look at some of the big stories that have come across this weekend. First of all, I hope you did have a great weekend. But today, the big story that people are talking about is something that, we should be talking about, which is about history, preserving history. Apparently, this is not a value of President Trump and his administration. It has been shared that just last month, the National Archives had to go to Mar-a-Lago in Florida to retrieve presidential documents that former President Trump took with him when they moved out of the White House. Now, these documents include letters, memos, and a whole lot of other things that were important in the communication between the White House and various world leaders, and other documents that were made based upon meetings, internal meetings. Now, the point of people getting a little bit like antsy about this is not just the fact that former President Trump just took the documents without actually turning those documents over to the National Archives, which presidents are supposed to do, but it also brings up a fact of national security. There's also brings up a fact that you have in these documents, you had top secret information that could not be shared with the public. And with the fact that President Trump deciding to move forward and just take these documents, it leaves a very, very crazy dark cloud over President Trump and his administration, as if it doesn't already have a dark cloud. But it leaves a crazy dark cloud over his administration about whether these documents were going to be used for his personal use, his business use, or what type of danger would this put the country in. And so we wanted to take a moment to just talk about the importance of preserving history. It's very, very important, to say the least, folks. And we know that in a democratic situation or a democratic place that we're in, passing that information on from to the National Archives, and so that both the National Archives and the next generation of administrations can take a look at it, can see it. The American people, we can have a place to reference what happened within those 4 years. But when you take history, it almost sounds like what we've been seeing happening across this country. There is almost an erasure of history of what happened. There's almost this type of, the president is not concerned about making sure that history is preserved. He's not concerned about putting certain information out there. And this president has been struggling with keeping his integrity, and the administration has been struggling to keep its integrity, because there are so many things that have been covered up in the course of those 4 years that President Trump was in office. So now we're at this place where we don't know what has been revealed. We don't know what has been shared. We don't know who knows what that came out of that may have come to President Trump and to his people that come to the White House. And that's what is that is the most concerning part about this whole dilemma. I want to bring in our culture crew member. She is an author, she's a writer, she is an activist, an educator, and she is the host of Queen Talks with Nira, my wife, Nira Muhammad. Nira, thank you so much for checking in this afternoon. How are you this afternoon?
I'm amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Nira, let's talk a little bit about this situation, and we should be joined by a representative from the National Archives as well, to give us some more details. But I just wanted to get your initial thoughts on this situation with the president taking these documents. I mean, some of these things are just basic memos. Other documents include some very highly sensitive information. What's your take of this, and how should we respond? The American people should respond, especially Black Americans.
So let me just say, I found it very interesting that, I was reading up on this on the Washington Post, and they were saying that the way that President Trump ripped these documents up was typically in fours. He ripped it down the middle, and then he ripped it across, and then he just threw them either in his trash in the Oval Office or just anywhere around the West Wing study of the White House. And I just thought it was really, really interesting, whether it was sensitive information or mundane information. He was in violation of the Presidential Records Act. That is the big thing, violating this act. Mind you, I read there's so many documents, like this is not unknown information. Trump is advised oftentimes by his chief of staff not to rip up those documents. So again, it just goes to show his lack of respect for, I am so sorry, guys. I'm on mom duty today. It shows his lack of respect for the law itself. I mean, this is our president, and he can't follow basic laws and rules. Like, that is, like, dude, you're breaking the law on a fundamental level, and you're doing it like, you're ripping it 4 pieces like it's nothing. Oh, forget this document. It's nothing. Whatever.
Right.
Okay. Thanks, President. It's like, it's hard to take a man serious when you see that he really has a lack of respect for our democracy and for our laws and the things that are he's supposed to follow certain laws, and he's just not doing it. So sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with you on that one, dear. I mean, the fact that here is a man that you like you said, he rips him up in a certain way. You're talking about, him telling his chief of staff to destroy documents. It always leads to the fact that this president has something to hide. And I cannot believe that you go into the Oval Office and have these meetings and have these conversations and truly believe that nothing is going to be recorded, nothing is going to be, put down on paper. I mean, you and I, and I know many people, there have been historical documentaries from FDR and all of these different presidents that every time a president has a meeting, there is someone there to always record the meeting. I'm thinking of FDR when he met with William Davis, when we saw that documentary. But there is always someone present to take those notes, because the president's word, as well as the person that they're doing the meeting with, their word is, it could be he say, she said, versus no, this is actually what happened. And every affair that happens in the country has to be documented. We should know that, because we can learn from that. If we're talking about papers relating to the Bay of Pigs with John F. Kennedy, to the Iraq War with President Bush, every president has records. And those records can be the key of how to handle a situation versus how not to handle a situation. And that's
and if you don't want to be seen as being guilty, have the proof that you're not guilty. You know what I mean? It's like, if you know that you're not doing anything nefarious, have that proof to back it up. When you find a president that's ripping up documents, throwing things away, it really makes you wonder why. That's the big thing. It's a big why.
And you know what? Here's the big thing. You talked about that presidential papers, that act. One of the big things that I think this is the glaring thing about this whole situation here is the fact that in 2024, people are still expecting this man to get back on the ballot. I mean, I'm wondering to myself, how can that possibly be? And how is he able to get back on the ballot if he has made such an egregious violation? That does not make sense to me. That, as you always say, make it make sense, folks. I don't understand how that can happen when you are trying to run again, but you're doing all of these violations. You're ripping up documents. You're telling people to lie. I mean, everything. And it's very, very unfortunate, because guess what? I mean, for us as the American people, we just don't know. But more importantly, it's insulting, because why? We see these violations of the law. We see these egregious acts. And yet people must think we're stupid to believe, and especially the Republican Party, they must think we're absolutely insane to believe, oh, no, they're going to forget about all these things come 2024. I just don't get it.
I mean, I truly don't understand either, Faraji. I think it's really sad. I'm not understanding how he's even allowed to run again in 2024. I'm hoping that by more and more of this information coming out, that something will be done, that the committee that is going to be examining January 6th will have more and more information to really block and stop that from happening. Because again, we need a president who respects our laws. I mean, this is a Presidential Records Act. Presidential Records Act. This is an act, a law made for presidents. It's like, bro, if you can't even follow your own rules, how can you expect people to follow you or to follow any law in general?
Right. And the funny part is, if we remember there, like when he ran for office, he was saying he had positioned himself as being the president about law and order. Right? Remember that? Like he was on the camera, I'm going to follow the law. And it's like, you don't want to actually follow the law for yourself. You really want other people to follow your law. It's like you are above the law.
Right. It's like, I'm above the law. I'm the president. I can do whatever I want. I think he really treated the presidency like it was a monarchy, like as if he were a king. And it's like, That's not how we do things over here, bro.
Right.
I'm sorry. It's just not how we do things. There's a system. We have checks and balances in place for a reason. And again, that's like me being an educator. I'm not following the rules. So why would my students listen to what I have to say? Oh, Ms. Muhammad, you don't follow the rules, so why should I? Why would the American people not think the same? Why would his followers not think exactly the same?
Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we'll have more conversation with Nira, my culture crew member. And of course, we'll be checking in with one of the staff members from the National Archives to give us some insight about why this situation is so important. So stay with us. A whole lot is coming up in this first half hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back. King. Yeah, I took it out, but you know, it's so funny, like.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I look a little bit better. Folks, welcome to the show. We've been talking about the fact that the National Archives had to retrieve presidential papers from Mar-a-Lago. This is the residence of former President Donald Trump, who took papers, memos, documents, and other important papers with him when he moved out of the White House. And many people are asking, well, why did you do that? And as a result of that, there's a very deep concern, not just about the preservation of history, but there's also great concern about that some of these papers contain very highly sensitive information relating to various meetings in the White House, correspondence to national leaders, some to Kim Jong-il, who President Trump said are like love letters. This is his language, not mine, folks. Love letters when it comes to their communication. But it opens the door for the discussion around, here you have a man who has no regard for tradition, for following the rules, for preserving history. All of that seems to be thrown out of the way. And I can't help but to think of the fact that that level of neglect and that level of disregard is something that we kind of see from the very top, from him all the way throughout his administration down to the supporters of President Trump. There seems to be no regard for law. There seems to be no regard for history. There seems to be no regard for making sure that certain pieces of this presidency stays intact. I mean, when we look at the presidency of Donald J. Trump, we will see a presidency, I think, that is scattered all over the place. It's like puzzle pieces, just scattered all over the place and trying to find pieces to bring it back together. But this man operates in a place of chaos. I remember, hearing on television, I think it was CNN or one of the networks, and they were saying like he loves to be in chaos. So we've been talking to our culture crew member, Nira Muhammad, who is a writer and educator and host of King Talks with Nira podcast. Nira, thank you again for being a part of this conversation. When you think about the work that you do as an educator, you work in the classroom, you work in other spaces as an educator, but then you're also, I would go as far as to say you are like an emerging historian. You love watching history, documentaries. You love learning about this stuff. And I mean, as one who you may, of course, you may not always agree with how decisions are made, but the fact is that you've always have a great respect for learning the truth, the history of various things. I mean, from a historical point of view, and then sharing this level of history with students, how do we have those conversations if you have the ones who are making the history seem to have no regard for who's to come behind them or what impact that they're making? How do you have those conversations both in and out of the classroom?
Well, for one, I like to bring light to experiences that my students can relate to. So in a situation like this, I would probably pose a question to them. How would you feel if you wrote an important document or your homework, for instance, and Mrs. Muhammad ripped up your homework? How would you feel? And I would just start a conversation with them from there. And then, because again, I love allowing students to think critically and allowing just the open dialogue, having that conversation with them. But as you were talking, Faraji, I wanted to share something with you about this whole process of Trump's, because I think it's really, really interesting. So I'm reading directly from the Washington Post, and it says, the ripping was so relentless that Trump's team implemented protocols to try to ensure that he was abiding by the Presidential Records Act. Typically, aides from either the Office of the Staff Secretary or the Oval Office operations team would come in behind Trump to retrieve the piles of torn paper he left in his wake. According to one person familiar with his routine, then staffers from the White House Office of Records Management were generally responsible for jigsawing the documents back together using clear tape. So this is not a situation where the documents were just thrown in the trash and then taken out. This was a situation where people had to do a job that wasn't in their job description. You know what I mean? Like, as a staffer, I would be thinking to myself, I did not go to college and graduate to sit up here and
put paper in the back together,
papers in a trash can and put them back together. But again, this is taking away time that these staffers could be doing other things, more important things. All the time that it takes to sift through this trash, to then have to go and put these pieces of paper back together, because sometimes he ripped them in fours, other times he would continue ripping. But it just goes to show you the lack of regard for even people's time, the time of the American people, our tax dollars, where it's going. I mean, we're literally paying for people at the time to sit and go through a trash can and put documents back together that should have never been ripped from the very beginning. That says a lot.
I would totally agree. And I think that is part of the reason why we are at this place, because of the simple fact that you know there was a huge disregard for people's jobs and roles. I mean, like you said, to be able to have to go into the president's office, go into the Oval Office, and then cleaning up, and then you got to put paces. I mean, you know, here you got.
It makes me think of how I, as a mom, am constantly running behind my children, cleaning up behind them, picking up their trash. It's ridiculous. Like, I don't want to do that. No one wants to do that at work. I mean, not for the president. You are the highest position in the United States of America. You hold the top role, and I have to treat you like you are a toddler. I mean, we like a toddler, and you know what I mean. We're not even talking about ripping paper. A toddler. I mean, my babies literally rip paper all day long. I should not have to clean that up behind a grown man who knows that by ripping that document, the moment that he rips that document, he's breaking the law. It's that simple.
It is that simple, but you know what? And then at the same time, it's not that simple.
Right.
It's not that simple. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to get more to it. So let's go. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more conversation about this. Stay with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network. Bro, what is...
Was I muted the whole time? Oh, God.
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Can't even. We need the green.
And then you work with him.
I don't know. Hold on, bro. I can't.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Today, we are continuing the conversation around the president destroying presidential papers. And as a result of that, destroying papers as well as taking those papers to his Mar-a-Lago residence in Florida, the National Archives had to go to retrieve those documents, memos, letters, and other documents from the president as a result of that unhistoric, unpresidential exercise. We're now joined by Princess Black from the National Archives to give us some insight as to what we should expect and, more importantly, the implications of this situation. Princess, thank you so much for joining us. How are you this afternoon?
I'm great. Thanks for asking. Formerly of the National Archives.
Oh, formerly of the National
Formerly of the
Archives.
National Archives.
Okay, not a problem.
Yes.
We're not. You're presently in this conversation, so that's all good.
Absolutely.
Princess, look, when we talk about this situation with President Trump, the fact that the National Archives pretty much had to chase him down to get these records, what does that say to you about him and his administration? Should this be a concern for
It should
us,
absolutely be
for
a
the American
concern.
people?
It should absolutely be a concern. The Federal Act of 1978, the Presidential Records Act of 1978, really established it be a requirement for all presidents to submit their records. And the impetus of that would be, of course, the Watergate scandal of 1972 to 74. That was really huge. And it was in that era that the government really made a big push for actually collecting documents from the presidents. Because when you think about it, these records really help contextualize a president's time in presidency. And it's important to our history and to collecting American history that we have those records. I mean, him leaving with those documents is just as huge as Hillary Clinton deleting or hiding emails from her presidency. All of these documents are important to the overarching narrative from that particular presidency. So it is key that the National Archives were able to retrieve those documents, and it is our hope that they were able to recover all of them. But he doesn't have the right. It is a federal law for them to be turned over to the National Archives, and so it is to be of much concern, because for him and his office to do such a thing means that there probably is something there that they want to strike from the record.
Probably. Princess, you and I both know there is.
Where there is smoke, there is certainly fire. And again, we hope that the fire did not get those documents, but it's imperative to the overall history of the country, but specifically this presidency. So we wonder, and we will hope that soon, I mean, you never know with when they'll actually release these documents to the public, or at what point will they be available in his presidential library? Because of course, each president since 1940 has had their own presidential library. So with them planning and implementing that, they should make it into that library, and it'll be interesting what we uncover during that process.
So given that, Princess, are we in a situation where, I mean, you expressed that it's certainly a concern for national security and for, just for the sake of learning and understanding that correspondence? Like, how will the National Archive, based upon your experience, how would they respond? I mean, we know that there was a law broken. Does this mean that President Trump is going to be arrested, or does this mean that President Trump won't be able to run for office? What are the consequences of this?
I'm not exactly clear on what the consequences of this may be. But when you look at Hillary Clinton and her time in office and her unwillingness to basically how she had to be bullied into uncovering those emails.
Right.
There was no kickback or prosecution in that matter. So when you look at this, and it is in fact, a part of the Presidential Records Act of 1978, I don't think that he will be prosecuted. I think that, it'll be a public prosecution, but I don't believe that it will actually be an action actually taken. I would be absolutely surprised.
I would be surprised too, because he's often touted himself as quote unquote Teflon Don, that nothing really sticks to him. And I would be surprised if something, and I'm saying that this is certainly a serious situation. But compared to the other things that I believe President Trump is behind, it's like a small pebble. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, it's definitely a
Al
small drop
Capone
in the
getting
bucket.
arrested for IRS tax evasion after killing all these people. You know what I mean?
Right, absolutely. And then also, I think that we often find ourselves in positions where people don't understand the importance or the implication that these types of activities actually cause. So, when you have people who lack the understanding of the importance, and of course, the National Archives is the institution that holds these federal records and all of the records of the presidents and their presidencies. Of course, they know the importance, and they took matters into their own hand and followed the protocols to retrieve and recover those documents. But to other people who may be a part of the law, sometimes it's hard to convey or convince them that these things are larger than what they really are.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to bring in our cultural crew member, Nira Muhammad, back into this conversation, Princess, because Nira is an educator. She's an emerging historian. And as we were talking before you got on, you know, when you're talking about what do you glean from this, how do you make sure that the next generation, whether it's political officials or the next president or even children who are learning about history, how do we have those conversations? How would you recommend that we have this conversation saying that, hey, you got a former president of the United States that didn't give a damn about the law?
Yeah, well, I wanted to say really quickly, because you were asking what would happen because of Trump throwing these documents away. So James Grossman, who's the executive director of the American Historical Association, said that yes, it is against the law, but the problem is that the Presidential Records Act, as written, does not have any real enforcement mechanism. So
Yeah,
let's change the law. How about that? Let's start there. We need to change the law, because to say that, okay, this is against the law, but if you break the law, it's okay. Like, what is the point?
Yeah.
What is the I think it's one of those things where it's like an ethical law. It's like, you know, we want you to do the right thing. We hope that you do the right thing. But if you don't, we'll just have some people come in behind you and clean up your mess. So again, as I mentioned, when I'm teaching my students, I'm always trying to allow them to use their voice and have their own opinion versus me telling them what my opinion is. So again, I would pose a question to them. How would you feel if you worked really, really hard on a project, you turned it in, and someone ripped up that paper? How would that make you feel? And then just allow them to all answer the question and just to talk and just to see where their head is at. Because as adults, we're often trying to put our ideas onto children instead of listening, because they have a lot of really great ideas too. So take a moment to just ask them questions, allow them to answer, and take a moment to learn, because we can actually learn a lot from children.
Yeah, and I think that to add to your point, Nira and Princess, to add to that point, the fact that we just haven't had a president, or please, and Princess, if I'm way off and wrong on this, it seems like this is the first time that this has happened in recent modern history. Is that correct? I mean, if you're talking about 1860 something, I'm gonna be like, oh, okay. But if you're talking about 19 something within the past 100 years, has this ever happened before?
not to my knowledge. And so it wouldn't go back to 1800 because it wouldn't go back to the 19th century, because again, it wasn't until FDR, Roosevelt came and started the trend of presidential libraries, that they were actually collecting the documents. The National Archives were actually collecting the documents. That's when that process began. And then again in 1978, you get the Presidential Records Act, which says, hey, presidents, after your presidency, the National Archives will take hold of those documents. And the last update to the actual Federal Records Act from 1950 was in November 2014. 2014. I can't remember what exactly prompted that change and what the specific change was made, but I hope from this instance that federal records, more specifically presidential and even other elected officials, are given a more specific charge to submit their records, but also for there to be some type of what's the word I'm looking for?
Enforcement mechanism.
Exactly, some type of enforcement behind that, because again, from my understanding of that particular act, there is no enforcement. So I think, like, this is said that, like, literally it's more of an ethical law, but there needs to be more behind that. And I think, again, like I said, between 1972 and 74, there was an edit due to the Watergate scandal. And they were like, no, you're going to have to turn over all of these documents. So I hope this is a moment in time in history where they require and even tighten up the procedure of the transmission of those documents from one agency to another. It needs to be tight.
If there was, Princess, if there was some enforcement of this, would that fall in the hands of the current president, or would that fall into the hands of Congress? Because if we're waiting on Congress, that man ain't gonna get prosecuted.
Yeah, I think it would probably fall in the hands of Congress, and that's our issue, which is why I said before that I think that this will be a public prosecution.
Oh, and it's unfortunate that we're at this stalemate in this country, right? I mean, we're dealing with a Republican Party. We talked about a little bit this last week, but we're dealing with a party that is in a state of denial, like a mind-boggling, awe-inspiring state of denial about the present political realities that we all sit in. And I'm saying, from the fact that as soon as they came out with the statement that January 6th was a legitimate political discourse, even though a discourse is a conversation, it's not a demonstration, that it just showed me that the level of denial that's coming from the Republican Party on this issue and around Trump, it's just like, now we're in a place of uncharted territory. That if Trump plans to run for office, which we all believe that he plans to run for 2024, there will be no boundaries set. There will be nothing that can stop him, quote unquote, unless there is some level of police enforcement. There has to be something. And I can't, and you can't tell people in 2 years or even next year, once that presidential race heats up, if Trump is on the campaign trail, you cannot tell people to go out and vote because it's for the betterment of the country. Because why? You got a criminal running for office. I mean, a legitimate, blatant. I mean, that's a slap in the face to be like, well, we need to go out and vote and make sure he don't get in office. How come we don't make sure he don't get on the ballot?
I think that's the big issue. That's the big issue right there. He shouldn't be allowed to be on the ballot. This man has zero respect for basic laws, presidential laws. Like, he can't even follow his job description. Or like, if you can't even follow your job description, why would we want to put you back in office? I mean, it's absolutely insane. Like, it's actually kind of laughable. You want to laugh to keep from crying at this point, because it's like, what's really happening at this point?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing that you do want to laugh, but then, I remember being on Brother Roland's show a few weeks ago, and one of the big things that, we were talking about was, a recent interview that Trump did with Candace Owens, and I made the point, Princess, that even though that conversation was crazy, even though people might say, oh, Trump is crazy, the fact is, he still has millions of people who vote and support him at this time. And so it's not, like you say, you got to laugh from crying, but then you go back to crying, you know what I mean, afterwards, because you realize, no, this is really happening. This is happening in America. This is happening modern day, quote unquote, post, put any word in there, Princess, racial, post-war, post-economic collapse America. This is really happening where you have an individual like this who seems to be playing. I mean, he's playing president. It's like he's a child just playing president, and no one is stopping him, Princess. No one is saying, and I mean stopping him to the point where he is immobilized, where he cannot be a part of the national conversation where he can't be considered to be a candidate for the next presidency of the United States?
Right. It's absolutely, it's petrifying to a degree when you have someone who has been in power, who lacks understanding and also respect for the very law and constitution that he is supposed to uphold, in addition to the fact that, I mean, him coming behind and even running again and not having any particular recourse for his actions. It is, I'm lost for words. And
I'm
I think we
lost
all
too.
are, because only in America could a white man do this type of thing and get away with it. Because there's no way that Kamala would go through these offices and just have a total disregard for the law and the federal regulations that are in place and not have more than just public prosecution. It would be a very huge thing, if you ask me, in my opinion.
It would be very, very huge. So now that those documents have been retrieved and you've been a part of, can you give us some insight, like what is the next part of this process? Now that these documents have retrieved, will the National Archives move forward in trying to make sure that they got all the documents, or they'll just say, look, let's just get what we can get from the situation and head on home?
I think that they will definitely make an earnest effort to retrieve all of the documents by doing an investigation and going through the records and seeing what should be in place and if there's anything that is missing, and possibly do, even further determination of what could possibly be stricken from the record. So I'd actually be interested to hear an actual follow-up in this matter, because I think oftentimes instances like this come and go and they're just kind of swept under the rug, and then it won't be dug up again until his presidential library opens, and then people are seeking records and it becomes possibly a conversation again.
I'm gonna say like we do in the street. Wait a minute, presidential library.
Every president since 1940 gets a presidential library where all of their library from their time in office, and along with their presidential records, such as the one the National Archives had to go retrieve from Florida.
Yeah.
Every president has one. They're currently working on Obama's library. I don't think it's finished.
I could get Obama. I'm just trying to figure out what's going to be in the library for President Trump, because we don't. What books has he used as a reference? Okay, so we're going to see some of these things. So it's pretty much still up in the air about how things are going to move forward.
Absolutely, it's still up in the air.
Wow.
Because it's anytime you're dealing with records and archiving, there's going to be a process that has to be gone through and completed, and then there's a push to either maybe redact or secure some documents until a further date, and then maybe there'll be some that'll be more readily available to the public and to researchers. But again, that'll be some time, because the Obama library isn't even complete at this point.
Wow. That will be some time. Princess Black, former staff member of the National Archives. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. We truly appreciate it. And guess what? We may just have to bring you back, because I'm keeping my eyes out on the development of this story as well, Princess. So thank you so much for your time.
It's an important story, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because those records are, again, they contextualize his presidency and the different things that are going on, and context is key in every matter and regard. So it's essential that those records are in place and that people have access to them, because that, again, that's very important. What is there? What is hidden? What is to be known? The stories that records will tell. I'm waiting to see, and I hope that that Congress enact further amendment to this particular act, because there needs to be more specificity in how they handle things if a president is unwilling or conveniently takes records from those that are
absolutely,
supposed to be
absolutely.
submitted.
Princess, we truly appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us here on The Culture. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to switch gears. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on with community colleges. Joe Biden has made the announcement saying that, you know, the idea of having free community colleges was not a part of the upcoming social plan for Build Back Better. And so we want to have a discussion about the implications of community colleges not being free at this time. We'll have that conversation. So stay with us. The Culture is coming right back to you right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Peace and welcome back to the show, folks. Let me just adjust this lighting. There we go. Welcome back to the program. We thank you so much for joining us in the second hour, folks. First, let me just say the first hour was absolutely phenomenal. We were able to check in with Ms. Princess Black from the National Archives, formerly of the National Archives, to talk to us a little bit about this situation with the presidential papers and President Trump. But the second hour, we want to look at a couple of other things. One of the big things that we saw that's on the landscape is this conversation around community colleges. And we're finding that community colleges around the country are struggling. And here in Baltimore City, for example, you have community colleges who are served as the gateway for many students to go on to the four-year institutions and then being able to graduate. I am a recipient or a beneficiary rather of the community college. I believe that if you are able to go to community college, get those 2 years in, get your associate's degree, that you are able to place yourself in a much better position to move forward along. Plus, community college also gives you the benefit of helping you to identify what you want to do, where you want to go in your career, in your personal and professional path. And so when we have these conversations, I think it's very, very important that we keep in mind that community colleges are there to help. Community colleges are there to help. We've been joined by Nira Muhammad, who is a writer, as an educator, and she's the host of the Queen Talks with Nira podcast. You can find that on all streaming platforms. And Nira, thank you again for being a part of this conversation when it comes to the issues of our culture. But looking at community college, you know it. I went through community college here in Baltimore, then moved on to the 4-year institution of Towson University. I went through that. Now, when you look at where community colleges are kind of challenged by in terms of enrollment, in terms of financial backing, and just in terms of people having the stigma that community colleges aren't quite the right place to start a journey when you're trying to go back into school. What do you have to say about that?
Well, honestly, I would say that everyone's journey is different, and I would always encourage students to take the journey that is best fit for them. Again, you have someone like yourself who you've been very adamant and very open about discussing that you started off in community college and then transferred to a 4-year college, a prestigious 4-year college. So again, you have some of those students who may not have done really well in high school. Their GPA may not be as strong. They may not want to spend as much money out of the gate. So I would present it as if I was a guidance counselor in a way that will make it more appeasing to students, allow them just really express to them the importance of really taking those first 2 years to get their gen ed classes done, to really figure out who they are, what they want to do, because their mind just might change within those 2 years of being in college. They may have decided, I want to be a lawyer, but then they're, as they're going on and on in college, they may say, you know what, I care more about social justice work. I want to get more into the nonprofit side of things. So there are a lot of things that you learn in the first 2 years of college. I will say with this entire situation, it's very disappointing because I think a lot of us, we voted for Biden because of some of these promises that were made to us. Jill Biden came out and she made a statement about it, saying that she's disappointed, but that, Joe did the best that he could. He's had to make compromises. And it just really, really bothers you to look at the fact that you have a senator out of West Virginia and out of Arizona who really kind of made this decision because of receiving that pushback from those two senators. They've had to make compromise. They had to make changes to this bill entirely. And it's heartbreaking because that was one of the main things that we wanted to see. We wanted to see students have the opportunity to either get community college education for free or to have some of our student loans forgiven. I know for me, that was a big, huge thing for millennials, making sure that we are able to get out of debt. It's just, there's so many things that we could discuss from this one topic, but again, I think it goes back to knowing who we're voting for. Because it's not always just about the president. We have to look at who we're putting in these very, very important seats, because a lot of times they're the ones blocking these changes that we all want to see.
Absolutely. And folks, when we're talking about, having these conversations, and Nira, I love that point you just made, that we got to know who we're voting for. And it's so sad because you don't want to keep up. You don't want to keep tabs on whether progress is made or in a sense of with the president, because, Joe Biden, who he represents, he worked with, of course, he was the vice president for Obama. So you kind of want to say, okay, you want to give him a pass considering the fact that we have a much more contentious Congress than we've had in the past few years. The stench of Trump is still present. So you want to kind of say, all right, okay. But then when the ball is dropped.
I'm actually not. I'm so disappointed. Yeah. I'm so disappointed. Yeah. I think because you had so many people who had such high hopes because we were promised so many different things. Yeah. And I think even being a part of the Black community, let's be real, we felt really disappointed at the end of Obama's presidency. A lot of us were still sitting there like,
yeah, it was
literally like that.
Right.
We were literally sitting there just like that. Like, okay, all right.
You wanted to see more impact.
You, Obama, I love the speeches that you make. You know how to gear me in when you start talking all that beautiful stuff. But what changes?
Right.
What changes were made during that, and I'm talking about those real changes that actually would like change our lives on a day-to-day basis. I'm not talking about those big changes that you're like, I had to go do some research to find. I'm talking about real change that impacted our lives on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
We were hoping to get that out of Joe. And again, I get it. Joe is not the end all be all. There is a system. But again, that makes us think back to the fact that we're not paying attention to the people that we really need to be paying attention to when we're at that ballot.
Yeah.
And that's the Congress, Senate. We have to change the way that we're approaching our government and our voting system. Because again,
absolutely,
we can keep on voting for our that presidential figure, but again, the president is not the one that's passing these laws.
Absolutely. I want to bring in Delegate State Representative Jazz Lewis to give us some insight about this, because Jazz has been talking about this issue for some time. Jazz is also running for Congress, but Jazz is here to share with us, what is the implications of the fact of where we are with this whole community college conversation. Jazz, Delegate, thank you so much for joining us. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you all so much for having me on. I'm happy to be here on The Culture with the Black Star Network. First, I want to say it is a disappointment that Free Community College did not make it in the Build Back Better Act. It is not just making education more affordable. It is addressing racial wealth inequality, because we know who goes to community college, to the point that was brought up earlier. I actually started at community college in a program that allowed high school students to start figuring out what they were going to do. And my experience there led me to look at political science. I was focused on architecture and things of that nature, and I got inspired. I think we can't miss the forest for the trees, though. The Build Back Better Act, the original plan did have a massive investment in our HBCUs and other minority serving institutions, which is good. But you got to get there. You got to get to the 4-year college. And to the point of the former correspondent, we need to make sure that however folks are going to continue their education, be that in vocational or trades or community college, we fully fund it. I also want to add that the difference between community college and 4-year is that many workers who are returning for a career change go to community college. So this is very key if we want to have a conversation about empowering workers to have some agency over their lives. We need to make sure that the barrier of it being too expensive isn't in the way of, that single mother who may have be working a 9-to-5 job, and they're inspired and want to start their own company, but they can't do so now because they're afraid of the debt and they got to take care of their kids, right? I think we can do better. I am hopeful that the majority of the Democratic caucus, both on the House side and the Senate side, are for these things. So hopefully with the Build Back Better Act being split up into pieces, hopefully we can see some movement. I know I very much would support this when we win this race, but with the current Congress, hopefully they can keep it moving.
So, Senator, when you think about this whole conversation, I mean, Jill Biden said that she believed that her husband was able to get this done, last year, that this was going to get done. And I understand the nature of politics. You can prophesize and you can, all you want, and then new stuff comes on the radar, which I understand. But it just leaves another bitter taste in people's mouths, especially for Black people. Let's keep it real. For Black folks, it's another political letdown where we're not being invested, we're not being taken our interests aren't being considered seriously. Part of me is thinking of myself like, how many more hits did we have to get to the Black agenda? You put this out there on your own website as you're running for Congress that you have a Black agenda, and I'm kind of confused if the president knows that this is a part of the Black agenda in terms of educational opportunity, educational achievement. The whole idea seems to just hit me in the face again and says like, man, stop trying to work across the aisle, quote unquote, and let's get some stuff done. It's hard. It's hard for us to keep seeing blow after blow, loss after loss, on issues that are so important to Black people in this country, yet we're still supposed to keep our heads held high, and we're still supposed to keep our chest up and say, okay, something is going to get done. How do we keep that? How do we keep that same level of faith and hope at this point?
Well, here's some things I'll add. First, I'll say I think we should require all of our public elected leaders and folks running for office to have a Black agenda. Just because someone is skin folk doesn't mean they're kinfolk, if you understand what I'm saying. And you need to vote not just in federal elections, but in state and local ones. The people who run for state and local office end up as your governors, end up as your members of Congress. They end up as your president. So we need to start pipelining our candidates early and often and make sure they're working on the things that we care about. One thing I would like to say, we have the most diverse on the House side, the most diverse Congress that we've ever had. I'd like to see more of those folks end up in the Senate because we are responding currently, and I don't like that. We are pumping out a tremendous amount of good stuff, whether that is free community college, expanded healthcare options, addressing issues of minority maternal health. And it's essentially wasting away in the Senate. What that tells me is that we need to organize. I started my career as a community organizer in Baltimore. We need to organize in those communities and make sure we're going to have folks who vote the way we want them to vote. And that's not just Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, because I imagine that there are some senators hiding behind them who just aren't as public and outspoken on their positions. We need to demand every person have a Black agenda, as I call it, an agenda based in equity inclusion, because we know Black people die younger, not just from more diseases, but from gun violence and multiple things. When we address the issues that disproportionately affect Black people, it will help everybody, right? And I think making community college free is key to that, because we know that when African Americans gain a college education, we gain it at more expense, which limits our ability to start businesses and employ people in our communities, right? So I think what we need to do is continue to organize and elect people who are going to be effective progressives and lay their plans up front.
But here's the thing about the senator, and Neri, I certainly want to get your take on this. But Senator, here's the thing. If the president comes into office saying, I'm going to do A, B, and C, and he understands that the Black vote, he would not have gotten in office if it wasn't for Black folks starting first in South Carolina and then, taking it from there. Because Black folks, we really weren't sold. Let's keep it honest. Let's keep it 100, Senator. We really weren't sold on Joe Biden. We were sold because Black folks, I think we were really sold on the idea of social equity. Those are the very things that you point out in your Black agenda. But there were a number of folks that voted for Bernie Sanders. There were a number of folks that were looking at other people. We weren't totally sold on Joe Biden. One of the big reasons why is that because of his approach was to try to get a consensus between the Republicans and the Democrats on all of the major bills. Whereas Black people are coming to a point in this country where we're saying, man, the hell with consent or consensus rather. We need to make sure that these things are done. And he promised those things. He said, look, I got your back because you had mine. And now to go back to the drawing board and say, we got to force this man to do what he said he's going to do. I mean, it's disheartening to say the least. Yeah. It's disheartening. Nero, what's your take?
Again, it takes me back to that conversation we had where we talked about how so many young millennials do not want to vote. And it's for this very, very reason. They feel like they're voting against the lesser of two evils. They feel like they are constantly being promised things, and then they're being let down. So it's really hard to put your faith in a system that is broken, the system that they feel as though was never even built to protect them or their rights. But I would say that we can't give up. I would say that, again, we have to start looking at at our Congress and voting on a local level, just as our delegate just mentioned. So again, this is not a time for us to say, you know what, the system's not working. Let's just say to hell with it. No, now is the time for us to say, you know what, we got to really make some changes. We have to stop allowing the Democratic Party to use the Black vote. We have to stop allowing the Democratic Party to use the Black vote because they are constantly using our Black vote and constantly failing us. So we have to hold them accountable.
Senator, what's your take?
Yeah, I think, I think folks have every right to be disappointed, with President Biden. He said that he was the one who could get the job done.
Right.
At the same token, he didn't choose his colleagues in the Senate. And I think to the point I was mentioning earlier, we need to make sure we it'd be a different circumstance. I'll put it this way. It'd be a different circumstance if we had all the votes we needed in the House and the Senate and he wasn't pushing it or he wasn't willing to sign it. That would be him, reneging on his promise, right? That isn't exactly what's happening here. We have some senators who are only Democrats when it's convenient for them. And we need to make sure that we turn out in North Carolina and West Virginia and Nevada and many of these places to make sure we get enough votes that we don't necessarily need them in particular. And it's about the pipeline, because the people, like I was saying before, who end up in the House of Representatives, the people who end up in your state legislature, in your city halls, are the folks who end up in these higher capacities. And if they don't understand and see our humanity, then they won't later, right? So we got to show up and make sure we get them there. And that's why I released my Black agenda today.
So let me ask you, though, Senator, what do given that that community college is not going to be a part of this plan? How does that affect community colleges in the state of Maryland? Are we talking about lack of funding? What are we talking about here, to be clear?
So the Build Back Better would have increased funding over and above what is mandated. So it wouldn't have, let's say, pulled it back. But I will say that in the Maryland General Assembly, we have increased funding to our community college, particularly through something we call the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, where we have increased teacher pay, and that's K through 12. But essentially what we've done is by the end of 10th grade, you effectively in high school, and you can start trying on trades, vocational training, community college, starting from that point to put you on your own pipeline. We are doing this at the state legislature and leading it. Many of these ideas is what I'm running to take to Congress of getting the job done. And I should add, we've done this in spite of Larry Hogan, our governor, who always is late to the party. But in Maryland, it won't necessarily be a lack for us, but it won't be that cash infusion that we need.
So for other jurisdictions across the country and other states, I mean, as far as how far, when it comes to the community college issue, do they have the level of support that they need, or are we going to start seeing community colleges start to shut their doors?
I think we could potentially see a lot of community colleges start to shut their doors as, the enrollment has been declining. Essentially, you fund what you prioritize. So if we're putting money into our four-year institutions and we're starving off our community colleges, then, people are going to follow the money where they think the resources are for them. And it's not right. Like I said, not only is free community college something that disproportionately are going to make sure low-income folks, people of color, don't have debt, particularly for people who are changing careers, which also are a lot of low-income workers of color. The place for them to go to is almost always community college. So we need them to be available.
And I mean, when we think about that, I mean, even if when you're talking about locally, and I know that everybody doesn't have this rule that if you graduate from high school, you may find yourself to be eligible to go into community college for free. I know that's happening here locally, but I'm thinking about the impact that it has on students who don't know where to go, what their next step should be, where I believe that community college can help fill in the gaps to help give people a sense of, okay, all right, I don't know whether I want to go to school for graphic design. Let me go to a community college. Because I think that one of the biggest money wasters is you go to a four-year institution and you say, okay, I'm going in undecided. And
absolutely.
You don't, and you go there, and the first 2 years you're just like, I'm undecided. Then the final 2 years you might, you kind of dibble and dabble in a concentration, only to get half of your money's worth.
Faraji, I'm gonna stop you there. You're talking to somebody who has almost 200 college credits for undergrad.
Right.
I wake up in the middle of the night with nightmares about my student loans. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? I had PTSD. Okay, I had PTSD about student loans. But honestly, I think what you're talking about, that is going to actually trickle down to the middle and high schools. It is very, very important to have guidance counselors and individuals on the school level, whether it's your community school coordinators or your guidance counselors, who really talk to students about their future, about their options. Do you want to go to vocational school? Do you want to go to a community college, or do you want to jump right into going to those 4-year colleges? I know here in Baltimore City, we're struggling with getting students on a reading level in 12th grade.
That's right.
So we're dealing with students who aren't on reading level in the 12th grade.
Yeah.
We have some other issues to talk about. Those babies aren't getting into a 4-year college. What are they going to do?
That's right.
So now we need to start thinking about education as a whole in this country. Education as a whole needs to be looked at, because if our babies are not even successful on a high school level, how the heck are we going to get them to a 4-year college?
Wow. That's a big question, Senator. How do we, and I guess that's going to be the big question for this, over the next 2 years, 2 to 3 years, as long as President Biden is in office. Do you foresee that this community college issue coming back into the national conversation with Congress? Do you foresee that happening?
I do see it coming right back. Because no one who is forward has walked away from the fight. I think you can see that from the comments that First Lady Dr. Biden put out. They apologized essentially for the compromise, but said that the fight isn't over, because they know there are a lot of people who still want this to happen. And I'm one of those folks. My campaign is focused on my baby boy and making sure we give a world that's better and more affordable. And he might go to a 4-year college, he might go to trade school, he might start off in community college. Either way, I want him to have the best educational experiences he can. And that means we need to fund our community colleges comparable to our 4-year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is going to be interesting, to say the least, how we're going to move forward. But, Jazz, I'm going to be cautiously optimistic. I'm going to be cautiously optimistic about how we move forward. I am in, Nira, myself, and many others, we've organized before around causes, and I'm totally in total agreement. It's just that, you want to see somebody do the right thing for the right reasons without all of the political stuff attached to it. But we're in this space right now that everything is politics. Everything requires a lot of maneuvering and handshaking and all of this stuff, rubbing shoulders, which is absolutely insane when you're just simply trying to provide opportunity for people to live better lives. And I think that's the sad part about this whole conversation, is that at the end of the day, it's not about the politics of it. It's about the impact that people won't be able to get the type of educational opportunities that they deserve to make their lives better. And that's the sad part for me. But we're going to still keep pushing. I'm a little upset right now, Senator, but we're going to keep pushing. So I appreciate you for joining us, and good luck on your run to Congress.
Anytime. Thanks for having me on. We're going to keep the fight alive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Folks, we got to take another pause. When we come back, more conversation. Let's talk a little bit about Twitter. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on with Trends Posting Doing the Most, and a whole lot more. Stay with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back to the show, folks. We've been having some great conversations, some great discussions around what's happening with community colleges. We've been having some great conversations and discussion around what's going on with President Trump and his whole situation. So I wanted to, as we close out the show, we're almost at the end of the show, and it's always happened so fast. And I want to thank our culture crew member, Nira Muhammad. She's been a soldier today. Handling the conversation so well. We wanted to talk a little bit about this latest situation with Twitter. And so I wanted to talk about this latest feature with Twitter, of how Twitter now has this feature where you can downvote on a person's comment. Now we're seeing this of course, on YouTube and on other platforms. But Twitter is saying, look, we want to create a space where people can say that we can downvote on this platform. So I wanted to get your, Nira, I appreciate you again for being a part of this whole conversation, but I want to get your take on this, because this is another platform that is finally moved or has evolved. That, as we've been having these discussions about these platforms, one of the big things that people have been saying is that you can only like, but you can't dislike, or you can't really express your true emotions about how somebody feels. So you either like it or scroll by it. Now you have this feature where you can downvote. My question is, are we going to downvote on people who think differently from us? And will it create like this echo chamber where we only want to see people who agree with us, whose comments agree with us, who shares data that supports our ideas? I'm going back to the discussion we had last week that, I'm all about free speech and I'm all about personal expression. But when you start to regulate it to the point where people can't express how they really feel, or you try to push away some different thought, I think that's dangerous, a dangerous and slippery slope. So what do you take from this situation?
Well, for starters, I think it's really great. There have been so many times that I wanted to dislike a comment or a post that someone made, and I'm like, I can't. But not because I just disagree with their views, but 9 times out of 10, it's been something that's been said that's really disrespectful, probably to women. And I've seen it and been like, I want to dislike this so bad. Again, why not? We don't all like the same things. Yes, people are probably going to get in their feelings about it every now and again. Oh, so-and-so doesn't like my vote. But again, if you're someone who already uses YouTube, then you're used to getting those dislikes on your posts. Well, hopefully you don't get them too often. But again, we're not robots. I think it's a great step in the right direction. I will be curious to find out what made Twitter decide to do this. But again, yes, people should have the right to say if they dislike something. And if you don't like it, unfriend them. Block them, whatever. I mean, like if someone's trolling your page, Faraji, and you know what I mean, they're like trolling.
Nobody trolls my page. First and foremost, nobody trolls my page.
So I'll troll your page this week.
Okay, calm.
No, but seriously, I'm not saying like a troll. You know what I mean? Someone that's like, oh, every time you post something, I don't like Faraji, so I'm gonna just go downvote every time he says something.
I got a couple of those
like.
people.
Yes, there are going to be those immature people out there. When you come across someone that is immature in that way, simply block them, keep it moving. But you can respectfully dislike something that someone says.
Yeah. But again, I think that we create our own echo chambers, and it leads people to not want to think outside of the box, that leaves people to everybody. Look, I know it is a human desire for people to want to be accepted by popular vote or the popular culture. You know what I mean? And I know some people are, even the fact of those, and I think this is so funny, you've probably seen this, especially as you as a creative, Nira, like when people are, I'm anti this, I'm anti that. Guess what? There are a lot of people that are anti this and anti.
You just joined the anti group.
Right, there's an anti-group. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody says like, you know, there are a lot of people who fit in that anti-group just as much as they fit in the for group. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
I know, like I'm team Samsung, but there's a lot of people that are team Samsung. So I'm not that different, but you know.
Right. Exactly.
in a room full of people, I am, because like the Android users, like we're really, really small. Like there's a small amount of Samsung users in the big scheme of things. But again, that comes to your preference. Like we have got to, and I think social media has created this problem. We've got to get out of the space of thinking that we have to be liked by everyone. You don't have to be liked by everyone. Everyone doesn't have to like what you're gonna like. But I think that it's a slippery slope because we are also in a cancel culture right now. We're living in the midst of a cancel culture. So it's very, very easy to want to just like ride the wave of what everyone else is thinking just because you're afraid of being canceled.
Yeah, one of the big things that they found that, and this is from the report, that they found that the downvote option was tested earlier in June of last year with iOS users, but the wider rollout doesn't appear to show an upvote button in place of the usual like button. So still some users have found the change to be reminiscent of Reddit. Now, I'm not on Reddit. You know what I mean? Like after a while, folks, this is too many platforms. I'm attached to my phone for too long. I'm not on those spaces, but they're trying to essentially give people options and choice. And I think we need to point the fact out that a lot of people are falling away from certain platforms. We talked about it with Facebook in terms of young people falling away from the platform. People are falling away from platform. People want to see videos and dancing and you know what I mean? And then being able to say what they want to say without any consequences, without any blowback. And that's the part that's disturbing the most about me. And it's like, you can't talk about you want to have a conversation. I personally don't believe people want to have conversations on social media anymore. We used to. Remember back in the day where people kind of go back and forth? Now it's like, you disagree with somebody, you're an absolute idiot. You know, where the hell did this person come from? All of these things, we get so upset at the difference.
It's really hard to have healthy debates. It's very hard to have healthy debates. But again, I think it's just such a slippery slope. There are certain conversations that I just won't even have. There are certain topics I won't even touch on my social media because they're just too sensitive. But I do think that we have to be more respectful of the fact that we're all operating from different lenses based on our experiences. And so when we think about it from that perspective, it should make us more tolerant of other people's opinions.
One of the things about the downvote feature is that they aren't public, and nor will they be shared with the tweet's author or others on the timeline. That's one of the things they're working on.
So only I can see it?
Yeah, it's like you're what's the word? You're kind of like
my analytics.
Yeah, your analytics. You'll see it, but that means that it's like when you get on Pandora. You hear a song, you don't like the song, you push the down.
Oh, I hit the button and it just disappears. It floats away into an abyss.
It doesn't show up in your playlist. So those type of
I love that. That's what it's gonna do. That's even better though, because there are some people that are just complete a-holes, and you just like, I don't want to ever see your stuff again. I like it. I like that.
And for Twitter, they're saying that the downvote button also is an indicator or notification that to let the platform know that a reply isn't adding to the conversation. So Twitter is trying to take a social responsibility approach and trying to let people know and giving quote unquote users, us, the choice to say, this doesn't help the conversation. But here's the problem.
But I have a question. Does that mean I'm going to get kicked off if I say something that people don't like?
No, you won't get kicked off because, I mean, just because you push the downvote button, no, you won't get kicked off.
No, I mean, if someone downvotes my comment, does that mean that I get like...
Now, that's a good question.
What happens to me
as the author,
people are downvoting?
You may just not be seen on their timeline.
On their timeline.
Yeah.
I'm already barely seen on people's timeline. How much more invisible can I get? Jesus. I mean, seriously. Okay, because I own a business. So like on Instagram, I can look at my insights and I can see how many people have actually seen my post. And that number is really, really, really small in comparison to the amount of followers that I have. I might as well get off social media, guys. Oh gosh, I'm getting off.
You're going.
At this point, I'm just talking to myself.
Right. Well, here's the thing. Like, again, like, I don't mind having people disagree with me. Like, you know, of course, for Black Star Network, we have some of the most outspoken, vocal supporters, and I love it. I love getting into the conversations. I don't mind that. What I do mind is a person not knowing how to express themselves and not knowing how to communicate, not knowing how to lay out their points with actual facts or with some sort of understanding of the facts, right? Like, I just don't get that. If you're going to call people out of their names, that's one thing. If you're going to make, use derogatory terms, that's another thing. But if you simply just can't communicate or you just don't understand and you just, and then here's the big question there. This is the big part about this. The big question comes, how do you determine truth? So if a person downvotes on your comment and say, well, this isn't adding to the conversation, that's their understanding of the truth. And it may not be the truth of the matter. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I just said, like, this, you're operating from people's vantage point. Like, information can be subjective. It can be subjective. So I might put out a statistic that I might say this is very helpful to women in the Black community, and you might have a white woman that says, downvote. Why is she talking about Black women? That's stupid. She should be talking about all women. So again, you're not going to cater to everybody. That's just the reality. And if we keep operating from a lens thinking that we're going to be relatable to everybody or liked by everybody, we are going to be disappointed more and more and more. And this goes back to thinking about even our self-esteem and what social media does to our self-esteem. In those moments where we're not getting the likes or we're getting those downvotes, how does that start to impact us mentally, emotionally?
Absolutely. Here's another feature that Twitter said they put out last month. They said they tested a new option to add one-time warnings to photos and videos you tweet out if they contain sensitive content. This option is now available to all global users on the web and Android. And today it's also this was put out last year in December, that they is also going to be available on iOS users. But the fact that you get a one-time warning to photos and videos that you tweet out, which is necessary, which is important to have, you know, but again, it's all about regulating people's behaviors and attitudes and belief systems. And I think that,
but again, because some people would someone might deem inappropriate, another person may not.
Exactly. And here's why I think that, Nero, when we have these conversations, and this is why I love to talk about technology and the intersection of technology and society, we really should have, and the federal government really should have, some sort of digital constitution, digital Bill of Rights, right? Which would regulate how these platforms engage with their audience and with their users, right? Because right now, it seems like these platforms, you have to rely on the morality or the moral goodwill of the founders or of the engineers versus what is actually the truth, right? And so if the engineers carry a certain level of bias, if they see the world a certain way, then the platform is going to be an extension of how they see the world. And I mean, we have to go back to that fundamental point that these platforms do shape people's opinions about themselves and the world around them.
They do, Faraj, and I think that's really scary. It's very dangerous. But again, I think the moment we say we want to regulate, I feel like so many things are already heavily regulated. And again, I want to make sure that we're not all being forced to think the same way, because once you start regulating, it's just like you get to choose what information people get to know. We just
Right.
talked about this with the banning of books. So again, slippery slope. I want this to be a positive thing, but again, I can see where it can also turn into a negative.
Absolutely, absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come up, this tonight's trends, post, and doing the most. We got some stuff that we want to bring to you, so stick around for that. That's going to be coming up here on The Culture on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, thank you so much for joining us. All right, it's time for your favorite segment. Let's go. Trends, post, and doing the most. All right, Nira, let's talk about some of the trends, posts, and doing the most. Those people that are doing some wild things. All right, first, I think we need to have a bigger conversation about what this actress is doing. But Awkwafina is the Asian actress, the comedic actress. She's born out of Queens, New York, and she's been under fire lately for the issue of cultural appropriation. And apparently, people are not happy about how she represents the culture as an Asian woman who often kind of uses mannerisms and dialect and even certain language that is from Black culture. She put out a statement today, and it's a pretty lengthy statement, so I'm going to just share with you just a little bit, folks, about what she says. She says, quote, "There is a socio-political context to everything, especially the historical context of the African-American community in this country. It is a group that is disproportionately affected by institutionalized policies and law enforcement policies, all the while having historically and routinely seen their culture stolen, exploited, and appropriated by the dominant culture for monetary gain without an acknowledgement nor respect for where those roots come from, the pioneers of its beginnings and the artists that perfected and mastered the craft." She says that it is a problem we still see today, though some may pass it off as a convoluted mixture of the internet TikTok slang generation. But she said that in life, linguistic acculturation, immigrant acculturation, and the inevitable passage of globalized internet slang all play a factor in the fine line between offense, and pop culture. But as a non-Black person of color, this is how she describes herself, "I stand by the fact that I will always listen and work tirelessly to understand the history and context of the African-American community, what is deemed inappropriate or backwards toward the progress of any and every marginalized group. but I must, and she said, but I must emphasize, to mock, belittle, or be unkind in any way possible at the expense of other is simply not my nature. It never has, and it never was. So here's a woman who is defending the fact that she grew up in Queens. She grew up in neighborhoods with Black people. She said that that a lot of her favorite shows had Black representation, and then she has an undying love and respect for hip hop. That she's not a culturally appropriating. She is essentially just showing her love for the culture. And I'm wondering, and I'm asking a question, dear, where's the line between having love of the culture and appropriating it? Where do you think that line is?
First of all, that statement should have started off with an apology for anyone who she did offend. That's where she should have started. Let's start there. I'm going to say I did not like her when she first came out. I definitely felt like she was culturally appropriating Black culture. She annoyed me. I was like, she's really over the top. Like, I grew up in, so the part of Baltimore that I grew up in, or the part that I went to high school in, was very mixed. My high school actually had more whites than it did Blacks. And I will say, there were some of them, I would not say who culturally appropriated Black culture, but they were literally like, all they knew was Black culture. But it didn't feel the way that it does when Awkwafina says it. For some reason, when she talks, she seems like she's acting. It feels very over the top. It's very annoying. And I hate to feel that way, but it really is. But I do like her as an actress. So the more that I've seen her in movies, I've come to kind of like, been like, all right, she's, she kind of got a pass. I do like her. She seems pretty cool. But it was annoying to me from the very beginning when I first saw her. I did not like her for that reason. And at the end of the day, if someone says you're appropriating their culture, apologize. Stop trying to defend. And that's what irritates me, that statement. She did not apologize and said she just defended. That's all you did, sweetheart. Nobody asked you to defend it. If you wanted to defend, you first start off by saying, I apologize for who I did offend. Hear me out. But she didn't do that. Instead, she just went on this rampage about, telling us things that we already know about being Black. We know what it's like to be Black, sweetheart. We don't need you to tell us. We know. We got it. She's culturally appropriating. I'm sorry. I felt that way. She's very over the top. It doesn't feel genuine. And that's just how I feel.
So at this point, should we should just keep blasting her? She should become a victim of cancel culture.
I think she needs to apologize. I think that's what she needs to start off at. I think I would feel a little bit differently had she had started off with an apology versus defending. I hate that. Even in my own personal relationships, if I address something to someone that offended me and they automatically go on the defense before apologizing, that tells me that you knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
That tells me that in some way, shape, form, or fashion, you knew that you were offending someone.
Right.
Because you already had a defense ready. Instead of, oh my gosh, I did not even realize that. I grew up around Black culture. I'm from Queens. I am so sorry, you guys. This is just so me. All my friends, like, this is all I know.
Yeah.
If she had said that, this is all I know.
Yeah.
It would have been different. You made a conscious decision. I know white people that grew up around Black people and don't act like they don't do all the over the top, girl, yes, period. They don't talk like that because that's just not who they are. You don't have to act like a person. You don't have to act like a certain group of people just because you're around them.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think it's interesting that as much as people hate Black folks in this country and around this world, our culture is appropriated all the damn time.
All the time. From our hairstyles are told that, when Kim Kardashian wore it, she gave, praise to another white woman for it. It's like, what? Our hoop earrings, we're told they're ghetto, but the moment white one wears them, they're chic. We see this all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a big issue for me. Our bamboo earrings, oh my gosh, all these things that we were told were ghetto that we're not allowed to wear. The moment white women wear it, it's so chic, it's so class. The whole conversation and tone changes. It's absolutely insane.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Or in the way we as women talk. How often are Black women made fun of for the way that we talk? Oh, you're ghetto. You talk so ghetto. But now Awkwafina does it and it's cute, it's funny. No, ma'am. No.
Right.
Absolutely not.
And I think there has to be some, like I said, there's this very thin line between having love for the culture and then you just making mockery of the culture, right? You're appropriating.
Yeah, no matter how much you love Black culture, sis, you're not Black. Period.
Right. And it's not about in culture. you know, I mean, you said it best, but I think the culture is about, if you know that that's not your original culture, then you respectfully, if you want to, quote unquote, you know, show your love for the culture, that you have to be respectful about it. There's a way to show, it's like there's a way to show respect to the Native American community.
Exactly.
There's
Absolutely.
a way to show respect to the Latino community, right? You know,
Absolutely.
I mean, as a black man, I can't just walk into the Latino neighborhood and then, you know, just thinking because I'm speaking Spanish, or just because, you know, I eat a certain type of food that makes me Latino, or I gotta weigh in. And I think,
yeah, babe, and actually, I could even talk about it outside of race. I was watching the show Emily in Paris, and in the second season, when one of the women came all the way from America to Paris, she was not respecting their culture. Now, mind you, that was one white woman to another white culture, but she was so rude. She didn't care about the way the Parisians run their you know, their and they're so different. I've been to Paris. Paris is very, very different. The hours that they operate their businesses is different. The way that they eat, I mean, just everything is different. You have to respect that. As a black woman going to Paris, I had to respect their culture. As a white woman going to Paris, you have to respect their culture. As a black woman, if I go to Africa, I have to respect African culture.
Absolutely.
Just because I'm black doesn't mean I can come in there, you know, appropriating what they do, because that's not where I operate from. I'm a black American woman. So even if I go to Africa, I have to respect their culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Got a time for one more story. Here's somebody that's possibly doing the most here. Two of your favorite people joining together to try to make something happen. Apparently, Antonio Brown has joined Kanye West's Donda Sport. Now, as you know, Antonio Brown walked off the field from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they're, you know, just a few games ago, and made a real big exit. And as he essentially walked off the field while they were still playing, he gets cut from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then there was talk about him going to the Ravens. Or at least he expressed interest in going to the Ravens and joining Lamar Jackson and company. That didn't happen. Now he is officially joined Kanye West's sports group, his sports agency.
So he doesn't want to play.
He doesn't want to play. He just wants to, I guess, be an ambassador. And so Donda Sports put out a statement saying that he's a former NFL Pro Bowl and Super Bowl champion. He joins the Donda Sports, where he will join Ye and Justice LeBoy to bring an athlete's perspective to all aspects of the organization. Donda Sports was founded with the vision of providing holistic support to athletes during and beyond their sports career. As Ye says, when the game is done, Donda Sports is not done with you. It's an LLC, and actually Antonio Brown is the first athlete to sign with the sports group.
Wow.
I don't even know how to like I feel like that's just open for like, okay.
I like the idea of the company.
Antonio Brown in the same space.
Right. I mean, I like the idea of the company, but Antonio Brown and Kanye West.
I know.
I can't take both of them at the same time.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, you imagine both of them being in a room. I mean, I'm sure they both have views of themselves that are just out of this world. They both got big heads about who they are and what they can do. So I'm just, part of me is like, I don't know how that will work out. I don't know if that will bring more athletes there. I don't know if this is a publicity stunt. I just don't know.
I feel like everything Kanye West does and says at this point is a publicity stunt. And let me just say, I've been riding with Kanye for a long time.
You have.
I'm one of the last black people to leave the Kanye West train. But he irritates me on so many different levels because this man, for one, let me just say, I don't like when people use mental health as an excuse to be a shitty person.
Yeah.
And I feel like he does that. And that's not fair. That's not fair to the millions of people who are living with the same exact condition, who are doing their best to manage those same conditions and emotions. So to use it as an excuse every single time you do something that's not right or as holy, just made up a word. If somebody doesn't ask holy, he can't use that as an excuse. That's not fair. So I mean, AB and Kanye West. We gotta breathe on that one.
Yeah, we gotta breathe a lot.
We gotta woosah. We gotta woosah.
Absolutely. All right, dear. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation tonight, and we look forward to talking to you throughout the week. Thank you so much for checking in.
Always.
Appreciate you. All right, folks. As you saw, we had some tech issues earlier today, and I had to switch up. So excuse the tech issues, and we still wanted to make sure that we give you a high quality show. We will certainly work to resolve those tech issues. So thank you for your patience with that. Also, make sure you support us on the Black Star Network. Of course, we have rolled out a number of high-quality programs that you don't want to miss, including The Culture and, of course, my big brother show, Roland Martin Unfiltered. So make sure you show your support for Black Star Network. Download the app for free on your phone or on your television set, and let your friends and family know that Black Star Network is in full gear, and we need your support. All right. Tomorrow, we got some great conversation, more of the Culture Crew, and a whole lot more. I want to thank my fantastic team. I want to thank my fantastic wife, Nira Muhammad, for being a part of the Culture Crew in the conversation today, and all of our very special guests. And as always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Talk to you then. Peace.